What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the Smark Smack Talk podcast, Hot Tags of the Week, edition number 672, where we're going to be talking about all the latest rumours, news, gossip, and recaps surrounding the world of professional wrestling. I'm your host once again, Callum Wiggins, but only this time I've not been left to fend for myself, as I'm joined for this episode, very happily so, by Robert DeFelice.
Hi, Callum. I first want to say you did a wonderful job carrying both the hot tags and the Wrestle Dream post show, and we're very thankful that you did it. But thankfully, I did make it out of the hurricane okay, so I'm here so that you're not alone ever again.
Absolutely, and that's the most important thing, is that the hurricane didn't sweep you away and all of your recording equipment as well. So we do get to talk and run through a few bits and pieces because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of New Japan related stuff, which we'll be getting into soon. There's a PWI Women's 250 list. There's been some divorces. There's been some departures. There's been some people appearing on podcasts that really shouldn't be appearing on podcasts. But there's a lot of stuff to cover here. And then obviously we'll get into the TV recaps at the end. But first of all, I want to invite everyone, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on the various podcast platforms if you're listening through there. Of course, if you are watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts on any of the topics that we're going to be discussing. Just say hi to Rob, welcome him back to the podcast, and you hopefully do so with Tony when he returns. Of course, you have heard Tony's voice this week as him and Rob earlier recorded the fantasy spooking podcast ahead of Halloween. So if you want to check out the crazy cards that Tony put together from the deepest recesses of his mind, I've only checked out a little bit of it, but the bits that I have heard, it's a little bit out there. But that's
absolutely
Tony.
Out of control. But he had a lot of fun doing it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out and leave a like and thumbs up on that video as well if you want to join us on the membership channel side of things for the YouTube. That gives you access to some of the Darkcast content and any other additional stuff that we put out there, and early access to recordings of the podcast that we do ahead of schedule. You can also follow that through Patreon as well, become a subscriber there. There's Redbubble and TeePublic merchandise shops as well if you want to just splash out on a little bit of Smark at Moment merchandise. And then you can follow us through Discord, through the Facebook group, and just head to the website and just check out all the articles and stuff on there as well. And we'll cut the plugs off for now from there, as we'll just dive into the topics. And first of all, I'd like to invite Rob to the floor to give your thoughts about Wrestle Dreamers. I'm the only one that's actually spoken from the Smark at Moment side of things about my thoughts from the show. So I want to make sure that you have a platform to give your thoughts on what you thought about the show.
So I want to say that I thought the show was very well done. I thought it was, a much more fast-paced AEW show. For me, I really enjoyed, the countdown surprise of Rico. I laughed out loud at the idea that they actually got him to appear. Also very glad that he was there because he had health issues over the years. So it's cool to see him in good shape. The triple threat for the International Championship was one of the best matches I've ever seen. The Kyle Fletcher turn was obvious, but I'm glad they went with Takeshita winning the belt. I'm glad that, they're maybe trying to go in a different direction with the Don Callis family. Yeah, again, the match itself is something you should absolutely seek out. I thought Private Party might have had the best match they've ever had, period. Especially on a grand stage like that. That match was tremendous, and it seems like they're not out of the loop yet. So that was really fun to see AEW kind of returning to, spotlighting these younger talents. And in that spirit, you had Jack Perry defeat Shibata in what I felt was kind of lame, but it's clear that all of the important stuff was after that, because Garcia came out to stop Perry from doing further damage to Shibata. MJF came back, and as soon as I saw MJF really staying on Garcia, I was like, okay, Adam Cole's coming. And then of course Adam Cole does come back, which I'm always happy to see. I know there was a lot of chatter about where their whole story stands because the babyface heel dynamic has flipped quite a lot. But I'm just glad that, these people are back and they're healthy. I think that's very important. I didn't touch on it. It was on the countdown, but Brian Cage wins the Ring of Honor TV title. That's great. And like with most Ring of Honor champions, they immediately said, okay, now we're going to find a spot for you permanently on AEW television. It's frustrating, but good for Brian Cage. I always thought that he was one of the first signings that kind of got swept under the rug. Whether or not you think that's fair, I think it's a little ridiculous that he came in with some huge energy behind him. Hopefully they can recapture that with his new role. A lot of people were really bothered by Jericho versus Briscoe, and I think it's just getting to the point where Jericho has just straight go away heat. I thought it was a fine match. I thought the idea of using the J Driller was clever. I know we're going to talk about what's next for them, and I thought that they had decent chemistry for two guys who haven't really done much together at all. I also thought that Willow and Mariah was fine. Mariah has an interesting run as a women's champion. Hasn't been my favorite, but I also think she delivers in the ring when she needs to, and this match was a good example of that. Thought it was weird that they had a segment on this show where Jerry Lynn told Orange Cassidy, like, hey, you can be the guy in AEW. And I hope they really work fast to play on that. Similarly, I thought it was strange that they had a whole talking segment between Swerve and Nana and MVP and Shelton Benjamin that didn't result in Bobby Lashley showing up. But I liked the fact that I liked the way that played out. I thought that was cool. Swerve is specifically a babyface. He's opposite Shelton, who feels like, at least for now, is going to get a nice little, what do you want to call it, legacy run, where people appreciate him, which I'm always for. Let's see, what am I missing besides the actual main event of the show? Oh, Jay White and Hangman. That opened the show. I thought it was great that Jay White won, and it looks like they're going to keep that feud going based on the events of Dynamite. And I have my theory, and I'll just say it now. My theory is they just want to do a hardcore match at Full Gear, which I'm fine with. Both of these guys are awesome and deserve to be in top single spots, so I'm looking forward to seeing where they go. And then there's the main event of it all, where Darby, but I guess I should say Darby and Brody had a fun match, but Darby winning didn't surprise me at all. And then there's the main event where Moxley ends the full-time career of Bryan Danielson. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm not saying that he will never wrestle again, but I think he's probably going to wrestle a lot less than originally believed. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's genuinely got a lot of built-up damage, and he's just ready to go be a dad. And for what it's worth, I thought the ending was really strong. I wasn't a fan of them immediately turning Wheeler, but I think there's something to the reluctant heel of like that. I don't want to do this to you, but I see now that it's the only way. And hopefully they continue to build on that. I thought the ending was strong. I thought Moxley, running through everything was a really fun way to end the show. And it's one of those, you ever see that article, Heartbreaking, the worst person you know made a great point. That's how I feel when Bully Ray said, listen, not every show needs to end on a high note. And while it's not what I would have done when initially thinking about it, I wanted to have Darby just beat Danielson and ascend to the top as the face of the company. I'm glad Moxley is back where he belongs, as it really feels like that championship is his belt, no matter what. And I really enjoyed the show. And I'll say this real quick too. The media scrum, for the first time ever, because of the post-show angle, had no Tony Khan. And I also really enjoyed 20-minute media scrums. So thumbs up for a fast-paced pay-per-view, and I'm feeling more enthusiastic about AEW than I have since probably the first quarter of the year.
I think that's a pretty good summation, echoing a lot of the thoughts that I had about the show. So I had a fantastic time. If you want to check out my full unfiltered thoughts, like just a few hours after the show took place, that you can head on over back to the video to see the post show, the non-live post show, but a post show nonetheless. And as we'll see if Tony has any thoughts about it. He probably hasn't watched it. And if he has watched any of it, he probably will have forgotten about it by the time that he'd have an opportunity to talk about it.
I don't know if we're going to hear Tony's thoughts on Wrestle Dream.
No, but that's fine. You've got both of our thoughts at the very least, so you can check all that stuff out. So that will draw a line under Wrestle Dream. We'll be talking a little bit about that when we get back to the AEW Dynamite results and talking about what happened on the TV show this week. But first, let's head on over eastwards to the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling and talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling King of Pro Wrestling, the show that took place last weekend. As I say, full disclosure, I've only watched the main event because I was only interested really in the main event, but I'll run through the other results as well.
And there's a lot of I also only watched the main event.
Yeah, but there are a few interesting things that happen throughout the show, which, let's say, even if I haven't watched the matches, I know what the implications are, a lot of these ones. So the opener of the night was Hiromu Takahashi defeated Mystico in with a standing figure 4 to force him to submit. And most interesting was post-match, Mystico challenged Hiromu to a hair versus mask match in the future. So I do not know when that is taking place, but I don't think, I don't think anyone really wants to see either Mystico take his mask off or Hiromu cut his hair off. So
yeah, I want to see neither of those things, I gotta tell you.
Yeah, so I have to see where that takes place, whether that happens in CMLL, whether that happens in New Japan. So as I say, they've said it, so it's going to happen. But when we want the result either way, it's still going to take place. So it'll be interesting to see what the result is. Maybe if it's a hair versus mask match, it's not like Hiromu loses all his hair, he just gets a short haircut for a while.
Yeah, that would be better than anything I can think of.
Next, we had the Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship match where the Intergalactic Jet Setters of Kushida and Kevin Knight defeated the Bullet Club War Dogs to win the titles. The one thing I've seen of this match is the absolutely ridiculous dive that Kevin Knight does, like jumping from the top rope all the way over the barricades onto everyone, which was awesome. And yeah, they seem like a fun team to have as the veteran and the young guy as the junior tag champions.
I still largely feel like these belts aren't necessary, but I guess it's a better way to allow certain juniors who might not be able to cross over well the chance to win championships. And I think Kevin Knight is fantastic, and of course Kushida is one of the best. That's cool that they were able to actually pick something up.
It was probably a much better match than the actual IWGP Tag Team Championship match, I can only imagine, with TMDK of Mikey Nichols and Shane Hayes retaining their championships over the Rogue Army of Bad Luck Fale and Caveman Ugg. Caveman Ugg is a bit of a name, probably someone that Tony probably should have considered for his spooky Halloween stuff.
I feel like Tony will enjoy Caveman Ugg.
Apparently he did well. He probably did better than
people
Fale
were really
did.
enjoying him. Yeah.
So, but yeah, TNDK retained. That was pretty obvious that was going to happen. And we'll talk about what's next for them when we get to our preview of Royal Quest straight after this. But yeah, I'd say that was a pretty much of a given result. Then you have, Oh, you have any other comments?
Go ahead. I was just going to say, there's more than just Caveman Ugg and Bad Luck Fale not being great tag team champions. There's a clear reason why TMDK came out on top here, and we'll get to that towards the end of the
show. So next we had Shingo Takagi retained his Never Openweight Championship against Ryohei Oiwa. Apparently, again, I saw a few clips from this one. It looked like he was a lot bigger than I remembered him from prior to his excursion, and he looks like he's got something about him.
That's good. I always like when the excursion actually helps establish the point that, people get to be better, like how, Naito changed his whole character and stuff like that. I always like when they're able to go away and come back much better.
And then post match there was a stare down between Takagi and Jose Fujita of the TMDK group as well. So seemingly going to set up a match between them, which is an interesting one because that is very much a heavyweight versus a junior heavyweight, but that's what the openweight championship is there for. So see how that goes. Triple threat match for the New Japan World Television Championship saw Ren Narita win the title from Jeff Cobb and Yota Tsuji. Probably most people's least favourite out of those three options, but he's now the champion. And yeah, that means that House of Torture have some gold, which is always a great thing.
Which is always a terrible thing. I like Ren Narita. I would have went with Yota Tsuji. I continue to be floored that this guy just doesn't make it.
But yeah, that seems to be his story. His story arc is that he just can't win titles, which is not the greatest story to be part of. But it's a story that makes certain people. I just don't think that Yota Tsuji has the underdog kind of appeal to him to be losing all these matches. He's not like a Sami Zayn or a Bryan Danielson or that kind of thing. He doesn't have that underdog aspect to him. He just seems like a cool guy. A cool, like, good-looking, rather big dude. So he should probably be winning things rather than, constantly falling short every time that there's a title on the line.
Now, I know eventually with Ziggler it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's kind of the issue I had with Ziggler, where it was like, people like this guy. He's got the tools, and you're just painting him as a loser. Eventually, he's not going to be able to overcome that. And I worry the same for Yota.
Before the next match, there was a pre-tape promo with the Young Bucks announcing that they would be returning to New Japan as part of the Wrestle Dynasty show.
The reaction for this wasn't as strong as I would have imagined, but it's exciting. I think that, well, I'll just be clear, I think they might be wrestling two other AEW contracted wrestlers, but two wrestlers who have very strong ties to New Japan. So I can't wait to see what they end up doing there.
This was followed by the six-man tag match, which saw Hiroshi Tanahashi, Shota Umino, and El Phantasmo defeat the House of Torture's Evil, Yujiro Takahashi, and Yoshinobu Kanemaru. But the big news was following the match, which was Tanahashi announcing that he would be retiring from pro wrestling as of January the 4th, 2026, so Wrestle Kingdom 2026 would be his final match, which is a real end of an era kind of retirement.
This hit me harder than I thought it would. It's actually the reason I woke up, stayed awake, and decided, let me see what's going on with New Japan, because for me, first of all, Tanahashi and Cena retiring days apart is a real end of an era across the wrestling world, and it really feels like, wow, these pillars of their generations, in Cena's case, is choosing to no longer go. In Tanahashi's case, his body's breaking down. It's really sad. I really want him to be able to have a strong final year, get his flowers. I know he said he wants his final match to be for the world title. I think he's earned that right, and we'll see how they get there. But it's really, this really hit me hard. I don't know about you, but Tanahashi was one of the reasons I really got into modern New Japan. His match with Muto at the third Wrestle Kingdom really, made me a fan of his, and this one kind of hurt.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I don't have the same strength of affinity to Tanahashi as I do with Okada, because he was the guy when I started getting into New Japan properly. But his legacy is undeniable, and the fact is that he's kind of the beacon of light that led New Japan from its dark ages into its current era of, obviously right now it's a little bit down, but in general its current era of prosperity. And he was the shining star and the ace at the heart of that, and for him to be hanging up his boots is a real kind of, it is just a changing era moment, especially with, Tetsuya Naito is like on the back end of his career. Okada now in AEW, and a lot of other guys New Japan have been building up recently, either in AEW or WWE. So it really does put a lot of pressure by that time next year. There has to be like a guy that stepped up to be like the guy of New Japan. So yeah, as I say, I don't know whether Tanahashi will get that, whether him just saying that he wants to fight for the World Championship is his final match, because fundamentally he is the president of the company, so he probably could make that happen if he wanted to. But maybe that's just him saying that. I'm sure he will get at least one world title match in his final year. I don't know whether that'll be his final match. I think when it may be a bit too early to do some guesswork now about who his final opponent will end up being, because my money is kind of on Okada, just to do like some sort of crossover between AEW, just so he can have his final match with probably his greatest ever rival. But it might be against one of the new guys they've got coming up to try and establish them by giving them a big victory over Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom. So, who really knows? But we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that to see how his final year goes. But yeah, it is a very, very big shifting of the paradigms for New Japan Pro Wrestling to have their eternal ace hang up his boots and just go back to the office job really instead.
Yeah, and again, that Cena comparison, I saw some people saying it'd be really cool if they were able to do a match. That won't happen, but if there was ever like a time to just try to do it, I think they would have a nice fun little exhibition.
So the next match would be Dookie defended his IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship against Show. I should pause for a second so Tony can laugh at the word Dookie. And then, if he is listening back to this, but this match won't happened in like a matter of minutes, because they just Show just attacked him early on. He took Dookie's mask off, revealed that he's now got this Kishin character, like Kishin Thunder Liger, where it's just like had red bloody face paint across him. He spat red mist into Show's face, hit two big moves, and got the win. So now seemingly Dookie has this alter ego character. And then following that match, you had Master Watto made his return and immediately set his sights on trying to reclaim the Junior Heavyweight Championship. So that adds a bit of a direction for the junior side of things moving forward. Probably that would be at least Master Watto and Dookie would be part of the Wrestle Kingdom match, you assume, for that championship. But yeah, it's interesting that they've gone with this new kind of direction for Dookie's character.
Yeah, I saw that and immediately thought of Kishin Liger as well. I like it. I think it's been long enough, not since he's retired, but since like the inception of Kishin Liger, that I don't feel like you're ripping something off. And I kind of like Master Watto. Like, I know some people really hate him. I know some people love him. And I'm excited to see what he can do going forward.
Had David Finlay defeated Hiroki Goto to defend his Global Heavyweight Championship in a match where Goto just, did his great, like, he's an old guy, but he's still got fight left in him routine, and Finlay just managed to overcome him. And Finlay announced that he wanted to avenge a loss that he recently had against Yuya Uemura, but instead he's going to be facing Taichi next. So another member of Just Five Guys.
Do you remember when like the NJPW United States Championship was headlining events and a huge deal? Why they did that and why they got rid of the IC belt, I don't know. Like, it really feels like this was a mistake.
Yeah, this doesn't fit. I mean, I think it's just the case that the title just doesn't feel like a big deal. I don't think David Finlay feels like a huge deal as much as they're trying to make him appear that right now. I imagine that based on what happened post-match, that the likely match at Wrestle Kingdom is going to be Finlay versus Yuya Uemura. But and then maybe if they decide to switch the title there, then it can have a little bit more interest surrounding it. But right now, it doesn't feel like the secondary title in New Japan. It does feel like a good couple of steps below that.
Really unfortunate.
But yeah, let's get to the match that we all actually cared about. The only real reason to watch this show, at least from my perspective, which was Tetsuya Naito versus Zack Sabre Jr. for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. This was Zack Sabre Jr. cashing in the title shot he earned by winning the G1 Climax, and he took a full advantage of the opportunity, becoming I believe the first. Oh no, it's not the first British guy because Will Ospreay did it, but like he becomes the latest British guy to win the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, forcing Naito, actually pinning Naito after hitting 3 Zack drivers to get the victory. And yeah, I absolutely adored this. As I say, the match was, it was good, but it wasn't like anything like super special you have to go out your way to see. But it was just the moment of seeing Zack Sabre Jr. get the victory, fully establishing him as like a world champion in New Japan, something that he's very much earned over the last few years. And yeah, it was just an awesome moment to see him holding the gold.
So I wonder how they get to Wrestle Kingdom now. Like, how do you get to the world title match?
I don't think that. I mean, in my mindset right now, I don't think that Zack Sabre Jr. is fighting a guy from New Japan in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. I'll put it that way.
Which show do you think Ospreay challenges for that title?
I think that. I don't know. I don't know whether it would be the Wrestle Kingdom or the Wrestle Dynasty show. Like, either way, I'd say I don't know whether it's even Ospreay for that sense, because it could be Okada, because Okada's always consistently had Zack's number in the past, so that would be a good one to put in there. I'm not just like focusing on AEW guys. I know there are guys in New Japan that could challenge for it, but there just doesn't feel like there's one that's been fully set up for it. I mean, the things that happened post-match of this, so when Junior's celebrating, Sonata comes out and challenges him, so that's the match that's going to happen at Royal Quest, which we'll talk about briefly, later on. So then Shota Umino came out, and Shota Umino was booed out of the building.
What the fuck?
Which shows just how badly he's doing in terms of just his character and his prestige in front of the fans. It's just like he's had very little in the way of evolution or show out performances ever since kind of pretty much he had that match with Ospreay where he came up just short of winning the United States title and had a great match with him, and like that felt like, okay, this is the passing of the torch moment. This is the moment where he will step it up and become the guy that we all expect him to be. And he's pretty much just been treading water ever since then. And he doesn't look great either. I don't think he's in fantastic shape either. He looks like he isn't as motivated, and the crowd seem to be recognizing that. And then Shingo Takagi came out as well, and they're all trying to vying for the title shot. So I guess any one of them could be the one. I presume based on that reaction, it's not going to be Zack versus Shota at Wrestle Kingdom. Shingo, you can get away with that one. It is putting a bit of like responsibility on Zack's shoulders to be like, okay, we need you to be our main event guy, headlining our biggest show of the year, and it would be interesting to see what the kind of fan response that would be when you had a safe pair of hands in Naito holding the title going into it. So they clearly have faith in him being able to draw a good crowd with whatever opponent he ends up facing. But yeah, we'll have to just see how it goes. But just from a pure fan perspective, it's just great to see him be world champion.
Yeah, another big moment was, even though he said this a million times, he reiterated again, I'm not leaving Japan. I think that's what he said to Naito. He was like, don't worry, I have the belt, I'm not leaving. And I think that's great. I think he's earned it, and I'm glad that he finally reached that mountaintop.
So that was King of Pro Wrestling. So we'll just move on quickly to, actually we can talk about, we'll save Power Struggle for a little bit longer because that's going to take place on November 4th, but some matches have already been announced for that as well. So we can talk about that later on, close to the time. But we'll talk about Royal Quest because that's happening this weekend. It is happening in the UK, and it's only happening literally an hour and a half away from where I live, but I'm not going to go to the show because No, that wasn't super enticed beforehand, and they hadn't really announced any matches prior to obviously this show because they had to get King of Pro Wrestling out of the way. And I'm busy occasionally, so I'm gonna sit this one out maybe. But we'll see what matches they got here. We'll just run through them quickly. Some of the matches I'm unfamiliar with or not particularly interested in, because you got like a pre-show match of Young Blood of Yuto Nakashima and Oscar Lube versus the Greedy Souls of Brendan White and Danny Jones. A lot of like indie, Rev Pro sort of guys. So not one that I'm particularly familiar with. I can't really predict one way or the other. I think I'll just go with Young Blood because they're put first on the card. So
yeah, that sounds about right to me. The one issue I have with these is like I'm not familiar with a lot of the
British guys.
Rev Pro names when they do this.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, it's a good opportunity to if you watch the show to see some of the talent that's there. I mean, I know that Rev Pro the night before Royal Quest are doing their Global Wars show as well, so I imagine there's a lot of New Japan guys on that show as well. I know there's some CMLL guys on it as well. So, but yeah, we'll see how these shows go. The first actual match on the card is Taiji Ishimori and a partner to be announced. We're taking on CPF of Joe Lando and Danny Black. Taiji Ishimori and the partner will almost certainly win because Taiji Ishimori and that partner will also be representing them in the Best of Super Juniors Tag League, which is coming up soon. So this is a chance to showcase the new partner that Taiji has.
Who do you think the partner is?
I could not tell you. I do not have a single clue in my mind who it could potentially be. So it could be a CMLL guy that we're unfamiliar with, or it could be I don't know anybody from New Japan that's like coming back from Excursion, especially not on the junior side of things. So yeah, there's very little for me to go on here.
Turn EOP back.
He wouldn't be a junior now, would he? He's in G1 and stuff like that now. So. Yeah, he'll have to be a junior guy. So I think that's just unfortunately it's gonna be a wait and see thing. I don't have the insight these days to really predict this one. But next we have Azumi and Dani Luna versus Mina Shirakawa and Kanji. Of course, Mina Shirakawa, the Rev Pro Women's World Champion.
She beat Dani Luna for the belt, didn't she?
Yes. So yeah, they get to get some action here as well. And I can imagine Azumi winning this match, pinning Kanji, and meaning that she'll get a shot at Mina Shirakawa. Maybe I know Mina Shirakawa is defending the title at the Rev Pro show. But if she's still the champion, that could mean that they have a match in Stardom for the title.
Well, I look at this and I say Shirakawa is so over right now that it's probably her, but Dani Luna is very good as well. And the only one I'm completely not too familiar with is Kanji. But I would imagine Team Shirakawa probably gets the win.
So next is Michael Oku versus Kosei Fujita. See, Michael Oku no longer the Rev Pro British World Champion. So he'll have a match with a member of the TMDK faction. I think Oku will get the victory. I know they're probably setting Fujita up for a shot at Shingo at some point for the openweight title, but he doesn't need to win every single match, and Oku is very well established in the UK scene, so I imagine he'll get the victory here.
Yeah, I also think Oku will get the win. He's so popular, not only in that circle, but just internationally, and I think it's well deserved. He's very good.
I saw last weekend that I think they're setting up a match between him and the recently returned Cara Noir for Riot Pro Wrestling as well. So,
have you seen any of that? Is the Riot Cabaret?
Yeah, the Riot Cabaret stuff. Yeah,
I've
seen bits and pieces. It looks, it's not like something that I would watch regularly because I think it is a bit too corny, even by wrestling standards in certain places. But it looks like, for a one-off fun night out, it looks like it's good. A good time.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of stuff like that. But I do think there's something to be said for wrestling being an attraction in that way.
You have Drilla Maloney versus Yota Tsuji. Yota Tsuji will win that match.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shota Umino versus Callum Newman. I believe Shota will win that match, but I would prefer if it was Newman, but almost certainly going to be Shota.
Yeah, since Shota was just in the mix with Zach and all that, I think it has to be Shota.
An odd one here, David Finlay in a non-title match against Taka Michinoku. I think Finlay will win. I just don't know why they're just not putting the title on the line, because he's going to win regardless. So.
Yeah, maybe they feel Taka has to earn it.
Well, Finlay's going to be facing a Tai Chi for the title at Power Struggle, so just facing another member of the Just Five Guys faction here instead. Then we got LIJ's, Tetsuya Naito, Hiromu, and Titan versus TMDK's. Oh, hey, Oiwa is part of TMDK, so that's part of it. Yeah. Robbie Eagles and Mascara Dorada.
Nice. I would say TMDK should win, keep the momentum strong, but I can see them losing as well.
And just so people know as well, this is Mascara Dorada. This is not Metalik. This is the actual.
What is he now?
Well, Metalik is Metalik, so Mascara Dorada is just the guy that took over that name once Metalik left for WWE.
Oh, so he's just known as Metalik still?
Metalik is like known as Metalik on the independents.
Interesting. I all this time I thought he was the.
Well, the thing is, the reason is because is Wikipedia says that it's Grand Metalik, but it's not. It's Mascara Dorada.
Ah, interesting.
So they get it wrong. So people shouldn't fall for that either. But then the two big matches on the show, which is TMDK defending their IWGP tag team titles. Actually, they're defending their strong openweight tag team titles, should I say, against Hiroshi Tanahashi and Tomohiro Ishii. So the fact that this isn't for the IWGP World Tag Team titles opens a little bit more of a window of opportunity for Tanahashi and Ishii to win, because it's only the strong titles. But I imagine TMDK is going to retain.
I would maybe go with Tanahashi. He just had that big announcement. Let's get him some kind of favor. Let's see what they have going for him for the next 12 months.
Yeah. And Ishii is, Ishii's super over in the UK.
Ishii's Ishii, and people will love him until his final match.
I know that Tomohiro Ishii is facing Luke Jacobs for the British Heavyweight Championship at the Rev Pro show the day before, so he could win the title here, maybe, just to balance out the fact that he's not going to win the British Heavyweight title against Luke Jacobs. So. And then the main event, Zatsu Jr. first title defense as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion facing Sonada, and obviously he'll retain the title because it's Sonada. But it's a good first match to have.
Sonada's interesting, right? Like,
not really.
Well, I mean that from like a development standpoint, because I remember when he was in TNA as like the Great Sonata, he had James Storm and stuff, and then he was like a nice mid card guy for LIJ. He looks great. Like he has the look of a champion. I just can't be bothered to be entertained by him.
He doesn't have a captivating personality, either from the sense of he's not super flamboyant or anything like that, but he's also not like, the strong silent type. He's just kind of there. So yeah, he won't win the title here. I know he's been champion beforehand, but Zach's going to retain in front of his
champion for
home
a
crowd.
While.
Yeah, I know, too long. But Zach will retain in front of his home crowd, and we'll see what the path for Wrestle Kingdom for him looks like. Maybe he'll be challenged by the person that he'll be facing at Wrestle Kingdom at the end of the show. Who knows? But that is the New Japan portion of this podcast out of the way. So let's move on to some more news from all around the place. Let's start with the PWI Women's 250, which was announced earlier this week. I'll run through the top 10 quickly, and we'll have a bit of a discussion about those ones before we dive a little bit deeper, maybe look at some of the other inclusions. So the top 10 let's go in reverse order. So at 10, we have the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Athena, followed by number 9, the current AEW Women's World Champion Mariah May. Then we have Willow Nightingale at 8, Bayley at 7, Saray at number 6, Stephanie Vicaire, number 5, Micah, number 4, Rhea Ripley at 3, current TNA Knockouts champion Jordan Grace at number 2, and then at number 1, Toni Storm is the top ranked woman for this year.
I don't agree with it.
Which parts in particular do you not agree with?
Specifically Toni Storm number 1. I think it should have been Jordan Grace.
I disagree. I think Toni Storm should be ahead of Jordan Grace, but for the simple reason that AEW is more big time
than
than
TNA.
TNA
I guess
is.
I understand that.
Like Toni Storm was like the champion for a big portion of the time that this list covers, and she also had the big match at All In to defend the title against Mariah May. I think that basically out of all the women from the top promotions or the top two promotions, I think that she's the most deserving of finishing top.
I also think if Ripley hadn't gotten hurt, she tops the list.
Well, Ripley would have to have matches probably to rank
That
higher.
is also true, yeah.
So that's kind of the point with that one as well. She did have a match on Raw this week, so that was a change of pace for her. But I think Jordan obviously had like a great title reign, and she definitely does merit being on there. I know she's appeared with like NXT and done some stuff in WWE with the Royal Rumble, but I just think that her title reign has just been so, I don't want to say bland, but it's a case of like she's just facing random people in TNA. Like, that doesn't feel like, as I say, you're watching more closely than me, but it just doesn't feel like there's a great deal of like.
She's outgrown that company.
Yeah, exactly. So
she's completely outgrown the company.
So people are just waiting, like, okay, when does she lose the title? We know that based on reports going now that her contract is going to expire in January, so she's going to be in the Royal Rumble, and that's probably when she's going to permanently sign with WWE.
It's weird, and like, I don't know what the plans are for this year, but I'll say this: given that sometimes they don't always go with their main story for the Rumble winner, a la Bayley, she could win the Rumble. You know?
Oh yeah, and that would definitely put her in a position to potentially be number one next year if that was the case. But yeah, right now I think that I agree with most of the positioning of the top 10. I think like you could obviously argue that Athena should be higher, but then again, her Ring of Honor World Title run has lost a lot of steam since the match with Billy Starks last year.
Why is she the only Ring of Honor champion that doesn't get to appear on AEW TV? Anyone know why that is? Like, what is that?
Oh yeah, I mean Mariah May, she's had a breakout year, and she's the current world champion, so it makes sense that she's up there. Willow's obviously had a great year as well. Bayley won the title at WrestleMania. So yeah, like as I say, I think that like Mike has done a lot of good work in Stardom, and Stephanie DeCare was like a huge deal in CMLL before she left, and now is part of WWE. So yeah, I can totally agree with like the top 10 being where they are. You got Roxanne Perez at number 11, of course, been NXT Women's Champion for a lot of this year. Liv Morgan, current Women's World Champion. Then you got Io Sky, who went into WrestleMania as the champion. Mayu Iwatani's there. So you could probably make an argument, and then you got like Masha Slamovich and Mina Shirakawa. You've got Becky Lynch at number 17. She did win the world title this year. Surprise, if you remember all that way back. You've got people like, and then going to the final 20 stuff, you got Mio Watanabe and Miyu Yamashita, and then Lyra Valkyria at number 20. So you probably make an argument for people with the top 15. You probably could like rearrange that a little bit slightly, but you could make the argument that Io Sky or Roxanne Perez should be in the top 10. Maybe even Mayu Iwatani as well, because she's done some great stuff in Stardom this year. But yeah, I'd say I'm not.
First time completely out of the top 20.
Well, her rankings for the previous 3 years prior to this one, so she's currently ranked number 34, and her previous rankings were, I believe, 1, 2, and 3.
Wow, that's a huge.
In the last 3 years, yeah, in the last 3 years. Obviously.
That doesn't bode well for the claims that since the Triple H regime, she's completely dropped down. But I think it was a necessary move, because she was going to get to Cena levels of like, go away, you win too much.
That's true, but then again, Cena still was top and still was the biggest merch mover in the company. So sometimes you sometimes you have to fight through the people, the boo boys in the crowd, and just go along with it. Don't get me wrong, I think that Bianca should have taken a step down, but she's taken a step so far down with basically being Jade Cargill's babysitter in tag team title matches.
But you would also, the argument can be made that's a necessary role. They wanted to make Jade feel like a big deal, and this has kind of been their best move for it.
Jade Cargill, just for clarity, is sitting at number 44 as well, so 10 places below Bianca.
Where was she last year?
I have no idea. I don't have last year's list in front of me. I only know the Bianca stuff because I saw people tweeting about it, because obviously it's such a massive drop for her from previous years. But you've got Julia at 21, Nia Jax at 22. You've got people like Julia Hart at 26, Kalani Jordan at 29, Naomi at 30. Got people like Billy Starks 33, Trish Statlander at 36, which feels quite low. But technically she didn't win a title this year. But I mean, she was TBS champion like late last year. Maybe she lost it at the time that this period is put together. But like, she feels like she should maybe be a bit higher. I'd say the same thing about maybe people like Alex Windsor.
The most interesting thing that I'm hearing is, if you're just a WWE fan looking at this, and Naomi's 4 spots higher than Belair, I don't know if you can comprehend that. That's mostly because of the TNA run, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine so, because she was just finishing up in TNA probably at this period when this started, because she returned to WWE at the Royal Rumble. So some other things, got Ash by Elegance at 45, ahead of Shayna Baszler at 46. Got like Red Velvet at 51, which again feels a little bit low considering the fact that she's the Ring of Honor women's television champion, but that's only recent.
She probably won it too late in the voting period.
Yeah. Got some interesting, like Queen Oanata at 55. Again, feels a little bit low.
She'll be much higher next year.
I'm actually like looking down here, and I just want to see quickly. Okay, so here's the super curious thing. I'm gonna have to do a quick search quickly just to see whether it is there. Oh, there's no Mercedes Moné.
No, she
did not have enough. Apparently, has not had enough singles matches during the qualifying period.
Made the cut, and she actually spoke about that in her Mercedes Moné mag, and talked about how she didn't make the cut, and realistically, can't blame her. She was hurt for most of the year, wasn't she?
Yeah, she didn't come back. Obviously, she returned in March, but realistically, like from March till October or September or whenever the cut point for this is, like, she's had enough time to have those matches.
Wow, she was one match short.
So
match short.
So yeah, that's because she should definitely be. I wouldn't say like super high up on this list. I'd say she probably would fit in and around about like the probably 11 to 20 range. But yeah, I'd say that's an odd one of that not being here, because you have to imagine that Rhea Ripley would have only had like a few matches more than what was necessary for it. And she's ranked up at number 3. But yeah, so you got all the way down to like Natalya at 100. Let's go down. Who's number 250? Nahir Robles, not a name that I'm familiar with.
Not a name I know.
Yeah, the most I guess the name that I'm most familiar with down at the lowest level is probably Alex Gracia at 240.
Yeah, I know that name. I haven't seen the full 250, but I'd imagine this is a lot harder than doing the PWI 500 for the men, because how many of these women's matches get spotlighted, unfortunately,
But quick number thing, where do you think Thea Hale was ranked?
I'm gonna say she's in double digits, but I'll say 78.
You are way off.
Oh God, how high is she?
It's not how high she is.
Oh, she low? Okay, 124.
Still way off.
I know, boy, how low is she?
She's 194.
Really? Like, that's weird. I feel like she's done a lot this year.
Yeah, she's really low down. You've got Tegan Knox at 178, and
whoa, stop.
Yeah,
Tegan Knox higher than Thea Hale. That's a little weird. One is significantly more featured.
Michin is 173.
That's
So
weird.
you got Tessa Blanchard at 155.
That's pretty crazy considering that, like, where's she wrestling now? XPW and that's it?
Mm. Got people like see if there's anybody else interested. Oh, the Kanji that we mentioned earlier. She's gonna be wrestling in that match, 133. So she's
Nice.
climbing up. I think she's only like 22 as well, so she's definitely got a lot of development there. Chelsea Green at 112.
Oh, she's gonna be higher next year.
I imagine so, yeah. Well, yeah. Although in this period, she would have been tag champion at some point this period, I imagine.
Yeah, but they weren't doing much.
Well, no one who ever wins the tag titles ever does do that much.
I mean, granted, because they've been on Bianca, they've managed to squeeze them in a lot more.
Mm. Oh yeah,
she's been featured a lot.
Yeah, you have to do it if she's holding the title, you're trying to feature that. But Piper Niven didn't even make the list.
That's really sad.
Apparently that's due to because apparently only singles matches count towards the rankings. So
Oh, okay, so that might be why Bianca's so far down, and that might be why Chelsea's as far down as she is.
Yeah. But anyway, you can check out that full list for yourself for the PWI thing. Of course, like the PWI thing, it's very much like a mix of kayfabe and reality anyway, so.
I like that, and I don't know why people this is the one bit of discourse that I enjoy, because at least you're talking about the product. We're not talking about one person's subjective feelings about how a match is played out. I like this.
Well, let's talk about one woman who didn't make the cut for the PWI Women's 250, but maybe has a better shot for it next year because she's now holding some gold around her waist, which is Candice LeRae defeated Io Sky recently to win the WWE Speed Women's Championship or Women's Speed Championship. Rob, as the resident Candice LeRae stan on the panel, what are your thoughts on her winning her first piece of WWE gold?
I might be the resident Candice LeRae stan in the world at this point. It's getting really thin out here, but no, I think it was really shocking to me, especially considering what was she up against Io? I was surprised they went with Candice, but at least they're trying to do something. I wonder what they tell these people when they give them the Speed Championship. What is this significant of? Why are you being given the belt? Do you see this parlaying into something greater? Because, yeah, it's cool that Candice has a belt, because I don't think she'll ever get one on the main roster. In fact, the only belt she's ever held is a now defunct NXT Women's Tag Title. So, I think it's cool that she won.
I imagine this belt will be defunct in the next couple of years as well, so that would be a nice track record for her.
They've got a multi-year deal, right?
Yeah, but that deal has to end eventually.
Yeah, when that deal ends, this whole concept will go away.
Because I can't tell you who the men's Speed champion is right now.
I've seen a handful of Speed matches, and they're pretty good. I think it's still Andrade, by the
way. See, maybe that's part of the reason because Andrade does appear he has been appearing on SmackDown recently because he's been having that long feud with Carmella Hayes and surrounding the United States title and all that other stuff. But he doesn't wear his Speed title to the ring. At least I'm aware of.
He's not allowed to.
Yeah, well that's the point. It's why put it on Io Sky when she's actually busy doing stuff, when she's shooting for the tag title. It's put it on Candice LeRae, she's not doing anything, so she can just be there and just do that stuff. So
yeah.
So yeah, but I can see that. I don't say it's just a nice little, this title doesn't really matter, but you've been here for a while and you never really gotten your chance, so let's just give it to you and you get to beat EO, which you've never done before. So it's a good thing for her, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's just pretty irrelevant. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's gonna mean much in the grand scheme of things.
A few other little bits pieces. John Laurinaitis and Kathy Colace, or Brie and Nikki Bella's mother, she announced that they've divorced, which, you pretty much see coming for quite a while, at least for the last year or so.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine, I didn't listen to the podcast where they briefly touch on her being divorced, but I know that I read a quote of something like, 1 minute you're doing great and the next minute your entire world is upside down. And that's how it felt as a bystander of all bystanders. I can't imagine what it felt like being Laurinaitis' wife. So good for her. I hope she finds some peace of mind. Sad that, ultimately her story didn't turn out the way that she thought it would, but absolutely good on her.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely the right call to separate ourselves from Laurinaitis with all the stuff that he's got going on at the moment, and yeah, so that felt like that was just a matter of time before we found out that was the case.
With this particular one, if you're the man's wife, regardless of whatever the legal process plays out, no, fuck, like, no, just like that's a betrayal of trust. That's a lot of things, and yeah, she's well within her right.
Not really a great time in terms of the Bella women and their relationships outside of, obviously,
it is not.
The Brie and Bryan Danielson. It just feels like, oh, that's so secure and it's all working out, and then everything else just like, it's almost like they're sitting at the dinner table, the meme of the dog at the dinner table while fire's going on around them, saying, oh, this is fine.
Yeah,
we're good.
Unfortunately, like it just seems like that's the way it is. But I commend, Ryan for being a stand-up guy and Brie for being right there with him.
A few other little bits and pieces of news. Rob Van Dam and Katie Forbes have announced they're launching Only Wrestlers, which is essentially OnlyFans for wrestlers, but they're not explicitly saying, oh, this is going to be, you can just share, a semi-porn site. Essentially,
it's just another subscription service
where people can get interactive with where fans can interact with wrestlers and wrestlers can share some content that they want to put out there, and it's meant to just be another means of, hey, this is, you can just
open a Patreon, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't want to knock RVD for doing his thing, but like, just open a page. Like, it's so unnecessary to create another service. But if you're interested, there are some pretty notable names to be on the platform. Brian Cage, John Morrison, Sabu's on there. I saw Scotty Riggs. There's also a lot of nobodies that I've never seen, but there's a few names that
Yeah, I saw some people like Charlie Haas on there. Tessa Blanchard is on it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, got people like Renee Michelle and stuff like that. I can't imagine what Sabu would be putting on that would be like equivalent to an OnlyFans type content, but we'll see.
How to crazy glue your wounds shut.
Chris Masters and what's his name? One of the Juggalos.
Oh, Violent J. Yeah.
Yeah, Violent J. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to check that out, if there's any of the wrestlers on there that you want to support, let's say there's a few like notable names from the past and then just a bunch of nobodies. But yeah, if you want to support people on that, then go check that out. See if before this endeavor probably inevitably folds after about a year or so when the time comes.
At least a year.
Yeah. Well, it's a year before like the website domain would expire. So by that point in time, they'll let it go probably.
And to be clear, again, I like Rob, I like Katie, but like, I like looking at the landscape of everything. I wonder how profitable that is.
So next bit of unfortunate news. The former Ring of Honor COO Joe Koff has passed away. He's been battling cancer for a long battle with it, and pushed away from treatments around about August time to just spend some more quality time with his family, and so he recently passed. There was a lot of tributes across multiple channels. TNA put a tribute out for him. There was Ring of Honor like a card commemorating him before the latest Ring of Honor TV show. So Joe Koff was a member of the Sinclair Broadcasting team that purchased Ring of Honor from Carrie Silkin back in 2011 at a point where it looked like the company could have folded without that purchase. Was the COO with the company until the company pretty much ceased to be before Tony Khan revived it a couple of years ago. But yeah, it seems like basically I've seen a lot of wrestlers and people within the business give tribute to him, and seems that he was a good guy and very helpful in terms of keeping the legacy of Ring of Honor alive at a very difficult period for them.
Yeah, he seems like the rare case of being the executive that didn't have anything to do with wrestling, that just sort of liked wrestling and wanted to see it continue and did what he could. I know Ring of Honor during COVID, a lot of praise was given to that company for how they handled everything and how they took care of talent. So rest in peace. And just it's always sad when you hear a story like this and then you find out he was actually a genuinely great person to people in the industry. So sad.
Yeah, so rest in peace to Joe Koff, and our commiserations to his family and friends. Just wanted to make sure that he got a bit of a recognition on the podcast as well, because we're both big fans of Ring of Honor. As I say, we have our differing thoughts about the current state of the product and its notoriety, but it's good that it's still around, and he was a big part in keeping that around. It could have disappeared entirely in 2011 if it wasn't for him and Sinclair Broadcasting. So
yeah, and I think that the Sinclair Broadcasting Group, while it wasn't
perfect.
Ring of Honor was, I think it played a huge part in where AEW is today,
Oh yeah, and what NXT was for that long period of time as well.
Absolutely.
I imagine that was the gateway for loads of people into the black and gold era of NXT, and then the gateway for a lot of people into Ring of Honor as well. It's there's a platform for so many people to hone their craft and become the names that would then eventually be able to be bigger stars in WWE and AEW. So yeah, it's imperative that Ring of Honor survived that long for a longer period of time. Bit of a tangential one here, but Terrifier 3 is the latest movie to top the US box office, and it features none other than Chris Jericho in a minor role, but Chris Jericho can say that he is a star, which they did on Dynamite. He is a star of the current #1 box office movie.
Yeah, which is good. It's very on brand for Jericho's character now to be like, yeah, guys, I'm in the top movie, everyone. But honestly, I'm glad he's found as much success as he has at this stage in the game. I know everybody's wishy-washy on Jericho right now, but I think he's worked very hard. So it is cool to see that success.
Apparently, it's on course to become the highest-grossing unrated film of all time.
That's pretty crazy.
Because currently the all-time unrated movie in terms of that was Renaissance, filmed by Beyonce, which got $33.9 million domestically. This one in its first weekend has already got $18.9 million. So yeah, Jericho could then hold the thing and say I'm part of the highest grossing unrated movie of all time. Just to add another feather into his cap. He's dabbling in unrated movies.
Yeah, it's true. He has to focus more on that because he can't focus specifically on demos anymore. He's too old.
But yeah, I think it's just hilarious just looking at these movies that are appearing on here. It's just a case of, oh yeah, Joker came out recently. It's just no, it's not going to be there, and it never will be.
Yeah, go to Tony's Letterboxd. You guys know where to find a mango tree. Go to his Letterboxd and see what he thought of that apparently disastrous movie.
Oh, you've not seen it?
I have not seen it.
I've not seen it either yet.
I don't know if I want to at this point. People are saying it's not so bad it's good. It's just bad.
Yeah, I know. I kind of want to. It kind of would tarnish it for me because obviously I was a big fan of the first Joker movie, and I thought that was really well put together. So I don't know if I don't know if I want to watch it just to see how big of a car wreck it is, but then do I risk tarnishing my whole enjoyment of the first movie by watching how bad the second movie is? So
yeah, you might, because I mean, like, the comments being made, like the whole idea that, oh, Arthur Fleck was never meant to be Joker. I read that somewhere. Like, what are we doing here? You knew what you were making. Go check out fanboysanonymous.com. That's what we're saying.
Yeah. Some news of a wrestler's reputation, which just continues to hit the skid ever since his retirement. Let's talk about the Undertaker. Yeah. Mark Calloway's Dead Man Talking podcast is apparently set to welcome a very special guest to an upcoming podcast in the form of Donald Trump, presidential candidate, former president himself, WWE Hall of Famer, of course.
So, I have a lot of genuine thoughts on this. Like, we obviously don't bring this up on Smark at the moment, but like, I saw a good tweet from Brandon Thurston that said, politics is supposed to be my escape from wrestling. And I'm very much in the same vein. I do subscribe to a lot of political podcasts, and I enjoy that stuff outside of this realm. But for some reason, because wrestling is everything, it keeps coming back up in this election. Hulk Hogan spoke at the RNC, which was a fever dream, and not just because at the time I was dealing with COVID. Kid Rock played American Badass on the RNC. It's always very weird. Like, look, Undertaker interviewing Trump, I want to get this out of the way, should surprise no one.
No.
This idea that, like, oh, well, I'm hurt by that. Like, him potentially voting for Trump, being super MAGA. I mean, for the love of God, Kane was also at the RNC. Linda is one of his super PAC leaders. Like, it makes sense. My immediate thought when I hear Trump's going on Taker's podcast is, you're not getting 60 minutes from him. So what are you going to do with Trump for the length of a podcast? Because I can't, I know people are mad that he's platforming Trump, but I can't imagine Undertaker is going to greenlight, yeah, let's have this dude run down Kamala Harris for a week, and then I still have to try to make a living with this podcast thing. I can't see that happening. I'm so curious as to what this is actually going to be.
I just think that, as I say, you're completely right that this isn't a surprising move at all. We know pretty much the way that Mark Calloway leans politically, because like Glenn Jacobs leans that way politically. There's a lot of wrestlers from that kind of era that lean that way politically. And Donald Trump was, around WWE during the time that these guys were not especially the peak of their careers, but they were definitely like prominent features. So Trump appearing on multiple places, trying to spread his like crazy theories, like his concept of a plan, and talk about all the cats and dogs being eaten by Haitians somewhere in the country. It's like, I'm sure he's just looking for opportunities to just peddle that stuff around, and the whole political stuff, just from an outsider looking into it, it just feels like a total clown show. A lot of the UK general election stuff feels a sort of clown show as well, but like this feels like just a completely different level, and that's mainly because Trump is just so ridiculous, just from an outsider's perspective, just the whole thing that he stands for. But that's the issue, is that he looks and acts so like derpy and out of his mind in certain places that it almost makes him endearing. It's very similar to like the Boris Johnson effect over in the UK. Like there's certain people that just, somehow give off the strange feeling of just being either harmless or chummy or that kind of stuff. And that is how they are able to let their evil just seep into people's like hearts and minds. So him appearing on the Undertaker's podcast, doesn't do anything. Like, it doesn't really even drop my appreciation of the Undertaker, because I've always thought the Undertaker's overrated anyway, and everything that he's done as like a real life human being is like just, has always just made me distasteful for him anyway. So this doesn't change that too much. But would have thought that he would have some. I say he had some common sense, but then again, like Donald Trump is beloved by close to half the country, so you never know.
So this election in particular is being dubbed the podcast election because this is the first time a lot of candidates are hitting like major podcasts. I know Kamala did Call Her Daddy. Trump has done a bunch of
Logan Paul stuff, yeah.
Yeah, he did the Logan Paul thing. He's done a lot of like other relevant like Twitch streamers and podcasters that I don't know because I'm a little older, but it doesn't surprise me that he's going for this one. I again just wonder, okay, where are they gonna cut him off on this particular show? And do they get is it like a 30-minute interview where 20 minutes of it is talking about, yeah, Vince is great and WWE is great? That's another thing. Will they even let him be like, yeah, Vince is great? It's a fucking weird mixed bag, but I am curious to see how off the rails it gets.
Yeah, I'm not going to check it out, but I'm sure we'll hear about what he says in that instance. I'm sure Mark will try and use the opportunity, like he does in every podcast, to just shit on the current wrestling product and talk about how it's weird that none of the wrestlers backstage nowadays carry guns or pulling knives out of people's throats or bullying people out of the locker room. But
what? Given this particular podcast and Mark's co-host, I can see this being a lot of talk on so talk to us about getting shot. Go through that whole experience. I can see that being a huge chunk of this. Because again, I know that they're going to try to keep the Kamala bashing to a minimum. And I don't know, I'm completely flabbergasted. But it's a real thing, by the way. This was not reported by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful or Dave Meltzer. No, this is reported by Politico, which means this is happening.
Yeah.
If not already happened. And there's only 3 weeks to go. So realistically, you have to push it out now. So I'm again very curious to see what goes on there.
So our next story, we'll move up swiftly past that one now. We've discussed that one enough. WWE are going to debut a behind-the-scenes documentary series on Netflix to kind of correlate with Raw moving over to there as well. And obviously on the UK side of things, all of the major programming is going to be on Netflix. So it's been put here from Bloomberg. World Wrestling Entertainment Inc., part of TKO Holdings Inc., is set to debut a behind-the-scenes documentary series on Netflix. WWE President Nick Khan announced on Thursday. The new series is part of WWE's expanded partnership with Netflix. Khan told the University of Southern California Next Level Sports Conference in Inglewood, California. Earlier this year, the two companies signed a $5 billion 10-year deal, which will bring WWE's flagship programming Raw to the streaming service in 2025. So basically not said anything. But apparently, Mark Shapiro previously said that WWE and Netflix will be working on ancillary programming similar to the Formula One Drive to Survive kind of backstage or backstage behind the scenes show that accompanies their Formula One season. So
did you watch TNA did a show called Reaction back in the day, back maybe 14, 15 years ago. And it was like a worked thing, but it was also just added programming to give backstage coloring to storylines. I'd be more interested in that than another we're gonna break the fourth wall. Not because that stuff isn't interesting, but because you can only bury the magic so many times before it's just no one's interested in hearing about how fake it is anymore. Because I can't imagine there's any more secrets to tell.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have a firmly backstage side of things now, because as I say, there's enough stuff we know like enough about the business now, and the business is so wide open to people that how it works that we don't really need like an official one. I say if it's one that's I probably could get down with one which does kind of further on the storylines. If it's like a supplemental thing to an episode of Raw, and then Raw happens, and then an hour-long show happens afterwards where you get more reaction and in-depth thing. Maybe just like a better version of Raw Talk, which would just be the behind-the-scenes stuff instead. But yeah, I'd say it depends on how, I guess, compelling the stories are, or actually what you get to see and hear about it. Because, it's always going to be sanitized, and it's always going to be checked over by WWE. So you're really not going to get like a true behind-the-scenes glimpse into everything that's going on. Yeah, it's you want it to be a bit of a balance, really. You want it to be still somewhat realistic, with maybe hints of being able to push it towards the new stories, but you don't want it to be like a totally kayfabe thing where people are just like, fake shoving each other behind the scenes. It's like, I'm going to get you in the ring next week and on Raw, and just setting things up like that. I just think that, because then it's just like, well, I just feel like I'm just watching another like nothing show where it's just like, just ancillary programming, like they say. It's like a complete waste of time for me checking out. Not that I'll check out most of this stuff anyway, but it just doesn't feel like there'd be any value to just another, fake show.
Is everything moving to Netflix for you? Does that at least
No,
make it easier for you to check it out?
it would make it easier, yeah, because I have Netflix.
Yeah, like, are you? Does that make it more like, okay, if I absolutely need to check out what happened on Raw last night, at least I know I can just go to Netflix and skim through it real quickly.
I mean, it obviously makes it more simple to do that, but it's just a case of like, it still wouldn't entice me any more than just going onto either Twitter or something like that and just finding clips, just seeing what people were talking about after the previous, the day after the show happens. So yeah, I'd say it's more likely to watch it, more likely to watch it through Netflix, but that's just going from like a 0 to a 0.1 chance of watching it.
Well, I will tell you, and I know we're gonna do TV talk later, but I feel like they need to keep all the shows at 2 hours. Raw feels so much better. I'm not saying it's a great show, but it feels so much better with this quickened pace and all of that, as opposed to 3 hours of stuff that they probably only had about an hour for and they drag out.
Yeah, as I say, we'll talk about it when we get to like the Raw recap stuff, because obviously I haven't been watching. I've heard like mixed things about the move back to 2 hours, so we'll see what that really covers. But the final thing to talk about before we head on over to those recaps is the news that Jimmy Jacobs, the former kind of one of the main writers and creative minds of AEW for the last couple of years, has resigned from the company. He left just before the Wrestle Dream show, or at least that was when the news broke that he just left the company. And yeah, it's just an interesting move. I know he had like a few matches on like Dark and Ring of Honor just to just do a few bits and pieces there. I know they did the big like angle where they had him come out for an entrance one time, and there was just like a ton of pyro. Just the entire pyro budget for that week just went off behind him. It was a little bit of a rib, but yeah, it feels like he was, because a lot of reports suggesting that he was basically, I wouldn't say Tony Khan's right hand man, but a very like heavily influential part of the creative process in AEW for the last couple of years. And so his resignation feels like, and also based on what we saw at Wrestle Dream and what we've seen from AEW over the last like week or so, does feel like there's been a shift in tone of the creative side of AEW.
The interesting thing to me is how much came out after. And I don't do the Twitter spaces with Ibu. I know Ibu is actually a very good source and knows his stuff, but I know that the next day he came out and said that some of the stuff that ended up circulating on Reddit was wrong. Because like one of the things I saw that I know I was still dealing with the hurricane, but I saw he wasn't familiar with Okada, which I think Sean quickly, shut down because of course he was. I don't know. Like I think there's arguably too many cooks in the kitchen right now at AEW. I'm not saying help isn't necessary because Tony was spreading himself too thin, but I think a dialed in focus would be nice. And if Jimmy Jacobs was doing some of the stuff that people weren't fond of, then so be it. Like now here's a chance to pivot and refresh. And I know that Jacobs has had a really good career as a writer. I still think that he was gypped out of a pretty decent wrestling career. But hopefully, whatever he does next, he's at peace with his time in wrestling and can sort of move on.
Yeah, I think that, you never know what the inner workings are behind the scenes. I think that based on what I saw from reports that he was quite heavily influential in a lot of Jericho segments, because he was also working with Jericho a lot during the Festival of Friendship stuff and the stuff that he was doing with Kevin Owens back in his final kind of years in WWE. So yeah, I assume that he did probably have a great deal of influence creatively, and the fact that he's resigned, or whether they've decided to go in a change of direction. I think that's probably a good thing, if not just because, not kind of trying to discredit anything that Jacobs was involved in, which is more of a case of the company in general, I think needed a tonal shift just to try and recapture a bit of excitement, and I think the stuff that we saw at Wrestle Dream was a very good first step in that. But yeah, it's just interesting to see how one person going is that it probably isn't as impactful as we might think it is. Maybe it is even more so. I don't know, but I don't think just Jimmy Jacobs goes and then everything changes. But I do think that maybe the product itself would benefit from Tony Khan being more hands-on with it, because it does seem like the last time something like this happened feels to me like the that Dark Order segment that everyone goes back to back in late 2019, pretty much with Dynamite just starting out, and that's awful segment where they come out and beat up the Elite, and then basically it feels like from that moment on Tony Khan said, right, your way and other people's suggestions doesn't work, we're just going to do it my way for a while. And then AEW did excellently creatively for the next year or two past that point. And then it just feels like the creative team in AEW just got bigger and there were more writers and more voices in the room. This does kind of feel like it's a reset to, okay, I'm at the helm, I'm taking care of this stuff now, I'll still listen to your ideas and suggestions, but everything's got to go through me now. So I'm hoping that's the case, because it does feel like Khan has the right kind of thoughts, and his approach to wrestling, from what I've seen in the past, does vibe with me just as a fan. But I don't necessarily suggest it does just losing Jimmy Jacobs, or Jimmy Jacobs was like a poison in the creative process. He was just one person that had his own ideas and his own views of wrestling that maybe don't necessarily align with me as much, especially because he had spent quite a while in the creative team in WWE as well, so that's always going to influence what your view of how wrestling should be.
Right.
So we'll see how it's transitioned, whether this new direction for AEW feels sustainable. Because that AEW has had these false dawns in the past where we thought that they're making this big change. Go back to the end of last year, where it's okay, the rankings are coming back and we're going to have this new sports orientated focus, and they've kind of veered in and out of that constantly. The tone of AEW has been very, very erratic for the last couple of years. So maybe now this is the one that, okay, we'll settle on this. This is what we're going to be for at least the time being. So, okay. So that's the end of the news and gossip stuff. I don't see anything else that's picked up recently. This would be the perfect time for some releases to be announced and anything like that, but I don't see anything else.
This would be that time where you just oh boy, and there's another McMahon allegation, kind of thing, as it normally happens when we're doing these hot tags.
Yeah, but I don't see anything that's popped up recently. So instead, we'll move on over to talk about TV stuff. So let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Raw. Of course, I'll probably have to lean quite heavily on you for this side of things, but I can run through stuff that happened. So it kicked off with Rhea Ripley calling out Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez, but there was Tiffany Stratton instead. And that ended up setting up a match for the main event, which would end up being Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton versus Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan, which ended in kind of a no contest.
I think I wrote literally that it ended in chaos because they didn't really call for a DQ one way or the other. Nia jumping everybody, which is
and she jumped on Liv and she tried to get Tiffany to cash in, but Dominic pulled her out of the ring. So this whole story, which is essentially building towards Nia Jax versus Liv Morgan at Crown Jewel for this Crown Jewel Women's Championship, seems to just be being built around the fact that Nia wants Tiffany to cash in on Liv beforehand. So yeah, that's a story. It kind of takes away from the actual match, but then again, the match itself isn't particularly appealing, and it's heel versus heel. So,
I am of the belief, given that Ripley appeared on SmackDown for no good reason, that Ripley's probably gonna beat Morgan before Crown Jewel. They only have a couple weeks.
See, I personally have more faith in Tiffany beating Nia before Crown Jewel.
Really?
Yeah, if I was to say like which one of those two is going to lose the title before Crown Jewel to have another match, I think I would put more money on Tiffany beating Nia for the title.
At least Tiffany's involved because she's paired with Nia. Like, there's no reason for Ripley to be like, I'm gonna get involved in it. Like, you're not the.
Well, she just wants to go after. Well, she just wants to go after Liv and Raquel.
Right.
So, like, she's still pissed about obviously what happened at Bad Blood. So that's her kind of involvement. But now she's also attacking Nia because Nia's trying to get involved as well. So, and I guess Nia doesn't want to face either Liv or Rhea. Realistically, she wants Tiffany to win the title. So Tiffany then lays down for her in the match. So.
I will say I'm genuinely surprised we haven't pulled the trigger on a Flair return yet.
Well, it just depends on her health. If she's ready to go, then I assume it won't take too long. But maybe they're just waiting for the right opportunity. I think they've kind of got to the point where it's like, yeah, we could probably wait till the Royal Rumble if we need to.
Right. They could do it. I think it'd be a bit overkill, but they could do a thing where, Becky and Charlotte return at the Rumble, and then you get a high going into WrestleMania, like the women's division's at full power again.
So we had, speaking of the women's division, tag title match was the first match on the show where Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair defended, successfully retained the titles over Damage Control thanks to some interference from Shakara Jackson and Lash Legend attacking Io Sky, letting Bianca get the win. So this is obviously leading to a triple threat women's title match, just to make sure that Damage Control can win the titles without having to pin either Jade or Bianca. Right. So this has been the whole story of their reign.
This is like the third time they're doing this.
Which is they have a triple threat match, they lose the titles to another team in it, and then if they don't have anything better to do, they'll just win the titles back from the team that didn't pin them in the first place.
But Jesus fucking Christ, nobody loses anything if they lose to Io Sky or Kairi Sane. Not even Bianca. Nobody loses anything.
I mean, Bianca lost a couple of weeks ago to Io Sky in a one-on-one match, and that seemed to be, a cool moment.
Jade Cargill is what I'm saying. Like, it's okay. This is part of the problem that she had in AEW. You keep undefeated streaks going too long, and it's inevitably a law of diminishing returns.
There was a backstage segment afterwards where Alan Pearce basically said to Finn Balor and Jay Uso, hey, you guys don't defend your tag titles very often. I'm going to set up a tournament where you have to defend your tag titles afterwards. It's like, why don't you just get them to defend their tag titles tonight? Because they haven't defended it for a month or so. It's like, that's you know, to say they feel it's one of these things where they've just called out the fact that, hey, we're not booking these tag titles very well.
I respect that they tried to frame it like Adam Pearce said, listen, I gave you all the time in the world to deal with your Damian Priest shit. That's done now. You're going to defend these titles. I respect that they tried, but yeah, it does come across like just have them defend the tag titles.
It had a like Bron Breakker saying why he's gone back to fighting for the Intercontinental title when it felt like he was going to go for the world title instead, but that's fine.
I call it for purposes of stalling. I think it's as simple as that, or it's as simple as they ran out of ideas for a certain somebody and they're just gonna quickly switch him over to the other show.
There's a very real possibility of that being the case. The War Raiders, now officially the War Raiders, make their return. Defeated Alpha Academy's Akira Tozawa and Otis in this number one contenders tournament for the tag titles.
The only thing I would have done was call them Hanson and Rowe. Like Eric and Ivar, it's just I don't know, I would have just shed all the layers of that whole thing, but War Raiders are great. I hope they get a chance to show that they're great.
Their finish looked really good. The back suplex into a splash combo. That looked like a cool way to finish somebody off. Just kill Tozawa in the ring.
Even though they both came back from serious injuries too, looked really good.
Yeah. Cody Rhodes came out, had a promo on Gunther. They had like a promo battle, and this was one of the big talking points of the show, and something that had to be quashed pretty quickly. And the fact that Cody talked about how he would beaten the most dominant champion in Roman Reigns and had slayed a beast as well, and people then started to get excited. Well, it's excited. Some people excited, some people really tense outraged about the fact that Brock Lesnar might be returning, but reports have since come out saying that there's no plans for Brock Lesnar to return to WWE anytime soon.
Here's what I don't like about that. I think you make it weirder if you don't just mention, and I beat Brock Lesnar. Paul Heyman gets to do it all. Paul Heyman just says Brock Lesnar, and people are like, there's not this big to do. I think it's fine for Cody to allude to the fact that, yes, he did in fact spend way too much time last year feuding with Brock Lesnar. You can't just sweep that under the rug. I understand why people don't want Brock back right now, and I'm not saying he should come back. I'm just saying it's okay to acknowledge his existence.
I guess so. Like there wasn't really a need for it here, because he could just say, I beat the most dominant champion in modern history. Because after Gunther calls him like a secondary champion, it's just like, I'm holding the champion that I won the main event of WrestleMania and I beat the most dominant champion, like who held this title for 3 years. I'm the number one guy in this company. You don't have to bring up Brock.
To me to hear Gunther be like, that's a secondary belt. Not because that's not what his character shouldn't say, but it's so glaringly clear which title was created as the consolation prize. So I feel like you could have put more of a significant stamp on that. But again, Cody being like, I beat Roman, I beat Lesnar, that's about as paint by numbers as you have to be when going into a match with a guy like Gunther.
Had Bron Breakker defeat Kofi Kingston, went for a post-match attack, and then Jey Uso helped clear him away.
There was also like he attacked Kofi. Xavier Woods did come out to defend Kofi, and then he got attacked, and then that's when Jey Uso made the save. I'll admit I have no idea where they're going with the New Day anymore. I'm excited by it, but also potentially just wondering if they're just in a holding pattern until they eventually just squash whatever beef this is.
Yeah, I would have thought like maybe the tag title tournament would be an opportunity for them to do it, because I still think that this ends with them winning the tag titles.
They are in the tournament.
Okay, but we'll have to wait and see. They may not win this tournament, and this might be the thing that like just sets Woods off a little bit more. But I still think it's a mistake to break them up. I just think that you're past the point of there being any value in breaking them up. So, R-Truth beat the Miz in less than a minute, rolling him up.
First of all, let me be clear. I'm not complaining that this match went 64 seconds. But this is a lot of what I'm seeing with the return of 2 hours. So on the
Short
first
matches.
2 hour, on the first 2 hour show, the very first thing that they did with the women was, and here's a 10-woman tag. And I went, oh boy, do I remember these days. And by the way, don't hate that idea completely, because sometimes you just have to do that. It's just, let's not go immediately back there right away. And same thing here. Miz loses in 1 minute and 4 seconds. There's like some distraction by the Final Testament. He does beat up R-Truth. They're doing the thing where R-Truth still just thinks he and the Miz are friends. I also know there was a Wyatt like symbol or something during this. I'll be honest
because apparently they're still around.
I'll be honest
able to
there.
tell.
Like, they completely dropped the ball there. And I can't even say like that's the fault of the performers. It's just they do this thing with the Wyatts all the time where they love the build and they love the excitement, and then they go, but I'm not sure what to do with it now that it's here. Very strange.
Because eventually the bell has to ring.
Yeah, and I mean, that is an issue, but also, even when it was an issue for Bray, and it wasn't always, but during the times that it was, he still carried a presence.
I'm not even saying it's because they're bad wrestlers. Like, by any stretch of the imagination, it's more just a case of they're so difficult to book as wrestlers because you try and present them as so dominant, but then you try and make sure they have competitive matches, and you don't want to bury the people that they're facing. So, like, they've always towed there's always been a line they've had to toe with any iteration of the Wyatt family or the Wyatt Six, and they just never can get it right.
My thing is, Undertaker and Kane are the exception that proves the rule, not the other way around. It's not easy to book these characters. I mean, even freaking in AEW, House of Black doesn't get featured very often because it's not easy to book spooky characters. It worked for Taker, and it worked for Kane because they were basically just able to transfer that aura to Kane. But it doesn't work as often as they try it.
The only other big thing to really note about this show was we saw the wheels get in motion for what we assume will end up being the inevitable Bloodline versus old Bloodline versus new Bloodline match at Survivor Series, where Jimmy Uso came to Raw, tried to get Jey Uso to come back or to hear him out, and Jey Uso just flat out said no. So yeah, and we know that next week he's going to face Bron Breakker for the title again.
How do you think they force the hand here?
One of two ways, and one way I think would be stupid. One is that Jimmy helps Jey retain the title against Braun to try and prove his allegiance, and Jey just, slowly, gradually gets pulled back in. The other one, which I think would make no sense whatsoever, is that just a member of the Bloodline cost Jey the title against Bron Breakker, even though he's very specifically said he's not going to be fighting. He doesn't want to go back to Roman and Jimmy. He's on his own now, and he's fine that way. But then they just decide, hey, Solo or Jacob Fatu or something like that just attacks him. Just like, okay, now I'm going to fight you. Because that just feels like, oh, you've created your own problem there.
Yeah, I mean, the Bloodline has done this. They did appear on that NXT episode about a month ago, where they just showed up, beat everybody up, and left. They could do that. I just think it'd be so silly.
Maybe the War Games match should be like the Bloodline versus like Roman, Jimmy, Axiom, and Nathan Fraser.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, that would be something. Be elevating people left and right. but I like it. I also think it was crazy to me that they did this on a taped show because that reaction was very canned. And if this happened, even if it was a backstage segment, if it happened in front of a live crowd, the roof would have blown off. It's the first time you're seeing Jimmy and Jay together. People blew the roof off in Atlanta for Jimmy coming back. And Jimmy did not have a good run at all post Jey Uso breakup. I mean,
you would have thought they would have gotten a good organic reaction if they'd have decided to wait a little while. But I guess they need to get things going quickly because like Survivor Series is, it's still a bit away, but it's still like just over a month or so. Yeah.
Yeah, they need to hurry it up, especially if you're going to get at least Jay, maybe Jay and Sammy to go over to SmackDown, which is again why I was like, I fantasy booked myself into a bit of a pickle where I was like, oh man, the easiest thing to do here is to just have Goldberg help Sammy beat Gunther. That way you get Sammy on SmackDown. That plays into the Cody Kevin Owens thing. And they just didn't. And I feel that here where it's just like, and inevitably they're right? Like, it doesn't matter how you get Jay into War Games, people are going to like it. And I kind of feel like that's cool and all, but you could be leaving so much money on the table here. And if you knew this is where you wanted to go, you could have set that wheel in motion as soon as Bad Blood. Jey Uso was watching from the skybox. You could have just had him, like, help them out and then go, I still don't like you. Something.
So that was Raw. Let's head on over to NXT. A show that I'm very much less familiar with, but it opened up with Tony D'Angelo celebrating him winning the NXT North American title, and then Obafemi came out and challenged him to a tables, ladders, and scares match for Halloween Havoc.
So Obafemi came out and was like, I'm fighting you, and then he just went and he spun the wheel, it landed on the tables, ladders, and scares. This is fine. This is not the kind of match that I would put them in. I think the bastardization of TLC is almost as egregious to me as Hell in a Cell. But it should be a fine match. And Obafemi will get to break weapons and slam people through things.
Yeah, but I also think that the benefit of doing this type of match, admittedly, I think there's just been there are just too many tables matches these days. Ladder matches these days. But the advantage of doing this type of match is that he can win them. D'Angelo can win the match and retain the title without having to pin Obafemi again.
That is true.
So I imagine that'll be the route they go down. Stephanie DeCare made her in-ring debut when she defeated Ren Sinclair. And post-match, Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade attacked afterward. Julia made the save, and then they challenged them to a tag team match at Halloween Havoc. So that's the route they're going for now.
I believe Booker T tried to call them the Divas of Destruction, and they are two kids who grew up in that Divas era, so I can see them liking that. But I'm just like, it feels so played out. You know what I mean?
Who are they referring to as the Divas of Destruction?
Roxanne and Cora.
Oh, okay. So I would have thought in terms of destruction, Care and Julia make more sense for that.
It would be the two that are gonna wreck shop. Yeah, no, it was Roxanne and Cora. And I'm just gonna go out on a limb here. Tony and I, by the way, Tony will be back next week. We're going to do the NXT Halloween Havoc preview on Tuesday night. But I'll say this now. I'm guessing Delta is just gonna help the heels win. And she'll be there heavy. Because they haven't actually said what she's doing.
Yeah. I imagine that if I was them, I'd go just based on how strong they presented her in the video packages. I think you go the Asuka route with her, or at least a part way of the Asuka route, which essentially her first match is just against a fairly established person, and you're roster, and she just beats them pretty comfortably, and you go on a bit of a undefeated streak with her.
I could see that. I know Kalani doesn't have an opponent yet, but she could if Fatal Influence, or as Tony would say, Flatulence, defeat Stephanie and Julia next week. One of them will get a shot at Kalani Jordan. If for whatever reason they lose, I can see it being like, hey, but you still have a match, and it's Delta.
Yeah, I could see that being the case. That'd be a good way of like kicking her off immediately if she just beat Kalani Jordan straight away for the title. There was a gentleman's duel match with Lexis King defeated Oro Mensah. So the kind of rules of this one was that could like throw people over the top rope or anything like that. It's very much like the most rudimentary, like strict rules that you ever see for a wrestling match. But yeah, that's, you know, Lexis King got a victory, which is a rare thing these days.
So, and I was able to formulate an article around this. The story was, going into this, well, you can't do a gentleman's duel because you're just going to cheat because you're Brian Pillman's kid, right? That's basically what, like, Lexis King is trying to be like, no, I'm not going to be my dad. And Oro Mensah's like, yeah, whatever, you're going to cheat because you're Pillman's kid. And he didn't cheat, but he did use the exact, and I'm talking exact setup, exact everything, the exact O'Connor roll style pin that Pillman used to defeat Liger at the 1992 Super Brawl. And while I would say that that's an incredible stretch, him going for the exact setup tells me no, that's what they're going for, that he is gonna embrace his father, but there's more to Brian Pillman than just the loose cannon. You know, Pillman was actually a babyface for the majority of his career, but only gets remembered for the heel turn.
Yeah, let's say that. I assume that this journey ends up with him just reverting back to the Brian Pillman Jr. name and then trying to do stuff with that.
And then, like, I think that's probably for the best at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so they can't hurt at this point. There's very little that they can do to hurt it that much further than what it's been for the last year or so for him. Nikita Lyons made her return. She defeated Lola Vice via pinfall with the Vader Bomb, thanks to Jada Parker attacking Vice during the match to give Nikita the advantage. Saw a lot of discourse about this match online. Presumably, mainly due to the fact that Nikita Lyons is walking with a person that's suffered 2 very serious knee injuries in the last couple of years.
Well, you wouldn't believe it, Callum, but she has suffered 2 very serious injuries in the past 2 years.
Oh, I saw some of the clips. I definitely would believe it.
I mean, the whole talk around Nikita, as it's always been, is just, wow, her looks, and wow, she moves around very slowly. And both statements, you know, are accurate, and they still think they have something. But maybe, I don't know, get her in a tag team. Maybe you can hide it that way.
Well, that might be part of what this route is, having Jada Parker attack Vice during it, because Nikita took advantage of that. Not necessarily say that she did it in a heelish way, but she did take advantage of it. So maybe teaming up Parker with Lyons is the route they're going to take with this.
I wouldn't hate it.
I'm sure some of the gooners on Twitter would be super excited about that prospect.
Dude, people act like they've never seen a woman before, and it's weird.
Speaking of which, I'll skip over the current match, but then go to Brooks Jensen versus Ashante, the Adonis, with Kyle Petrovic coming out and distracting Ashante with putting petals onto the ring mat. So he looked like he hadn't seen a woman before.
I would have gone with for this, but I'm interested to see how they play it out.
Ridge Holland defeated Riley Osborne, and then Andre Chase came out to make the save, so they build up presumably to a Halloween Havoc match between Chase and Holland. So
So I'm officially like done with Chase U.
I think most people are probably on that boat.
Like the Ridge Holland thing was pretty much the death knell for me. Like it's run its course. It's like one of the only NXT 2.0 gimmicks that's still going.
Yeah, I would probably be about time to bring an end to it, but it does feel like they're just going to continue to stretch it out. It doesn't feel like him facing Ridge is going to be the end of Chase U. It just feels that it has to end with Chase U. Well, with Andre Chase like just calling an end to it at some point.
Just do a graduation ceremony already. Like, what are we doing here?
And then in the main event, Ethan Page defeated Javon Evans and Wesley in a triple threat match to earn another match with Trick Williams for the title. So he's going to get his rematch for it in a Devil's Playground match at Halloween Havoc.
That's just a no DQ match. I had to look it up. It's just a no DQ.
But it's in a playground, so I imagine they'll be like hitting them with swings and stuff like that.
You know, I'm kind of disappointed that they're going with this, and as opposed to Wesley or Javon or anything that's like
different or interesting,
new. And I would be okay with Ethan getting the match, but I did some research, and it's like Ethan hasn't beaten this dude one-on-one. What, like, do something else.
Yeah, it does feel like just treading water until you can find another opponent for Trick Williams. As I say, I'm not saying he should have lost the title straight away at Halloween Havoc, but it doesn't feel like it's a particularly fresh matchup, especially because like their first match, or at least the match they had where Trick won the title back, it wasn't exactly like, you know, a big blow away, super exciting match they want to do again. It was just, you know, a fine, decent, middle of the road match, and they'll probably just have another fine, decent, middle of the road hardcore match at Halloween Havoc. So, you know, that's not a particularly exciting route they could have gone there.
Right, and they keep putting Trick. I understand he's the face of NXT, but give him some exciting matches. He's super charismatic. He's super over. Now give him like a feud that he can sink his teeth into.
So let's round things off for this edition of the Hot Tags by reviewing and recapping AEW Dynamite. So I thought the show was overall a good show, but I had a bit of issue with the ordering of the show. I'm totally fine with what they did on the show. I just think that it was in the wrong order.
Do you think Moxley should have closed the show?
No, I think Moxley should have opened the show.
But I mean, like so he did open it with the vignette.
Yeah, they had the vignette, which is great.
Opened as well.
Well, I think that they should have done something earlier on to kind of expand on the gravity of it. Not necessarily having him do that match. I think it was actually kind of fine for them to be like top of the hour, but I think they needed to do something else which kind of built a little bit more into the severity and the somberness of the occasion at Wrestle Dream. Because they just I thought the John Moxley promo that they did at start was just fantastic, but then it just immediately goes to Adam Cole coming out, which, you know, is fine. But I just feel like, and this, you know, this is just me speculating, but I feel like MJF probably knew that it was going to get like, there was a good chance this got a decent number off of what happened at Wrestle Dream. And so he, you know, he's a smart guy and he thought, well, my segment has to go on first then because that's going to have the most viewers in it. And that makes me look good. I think MJF is just a smart guy. I think he knows how things work.
I only say that because Punk's done the same thing. Like,
the smartest guys always do that stuff. Like Roman does it, you know, like people know Hogan is famous for doing it in the past and stuff like that. So like people know how to manipulate this stuff. So made sure that Adam Cole would be coming out first where he cut a promo, basically like cut under the fact that like he doesn't want Undisputed Kingdom to help out. Didn't mention Wardlow at all, so that's pretty much
that was fun.
Dead and buried. Yeah, he's just dead and buried at this point. And then Max had a you know, via satellite thing kind of video saying like just to add a bit more spice to it, and it's just like, you know, they're gonna have their match presumably at Full Gear.
How much time do we have till Full Gear?
I believe it is mid-November.
Do we have enough time
probably 4
to
weeks.
Do like a Labors of Jericho sort of deal?
I would, if I was them, and this is just me, I would do everything in my power to make sure that Adam Cole is not in that ring before the match happens.
I
Because
hear ya, but I'm like,
I know there's an argument that he might need some tune-up matches, but I'd rather just just this is the match that people want to see, just do it, and hope that Adam Cole can hold his end of the bargain up.
it does feel like it needs to happen and get out of the way.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Chris Jericho was having an interview after Wrestle Dream, and he challenged. Well, he didn't challenge Mark Briscoe again. He basically he said that he wanted a rematch and brought up Jay's name again, and Briscoe said that he said Jay's name. So and this is setting a bad precedent for Jay, because it basically means that for Mark, but anyone that mentions Jay's name is going to get a title shot against him now. So, but they're going to have a ladder war match again, more ladders get involved next week for the Ring of Honor World Title.
You know what would be fucking cool if it was next week on Ring of Honor?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know it's played out. I know everybody says the same beat, but I care less and less and less about Ring of Honor as a show, and I've started to actively get mad that it's still supposed to be something worth covering, because you can't even compare it to NXT at this point, because it's not like, oh, WWE is hyping NXT and then does literally all the championship matches on either Raw or SmackDown or a main roster pay-per-view. It's weird. But that being said, I think Jericho's fully winning this. And I think Jericho... And I'll go a step further. I think if Jericho wins, they've got a TV deal.
I think Briscoe's retaining. I think they're just doing it to stretch it out a little bit longer and have a world title match on next week's show.
I think I'll go a step further even than that. Say if Jericho loses, I think he's going away. It's a ladder. It's a ladder war. Somebody's either winning a belt or Jericho should get hurt enough that he can go away for a while.
I don't want to put any stock in the idea of Jericho going away, because I don't want to get my hopes up.
He just hasn't gone away yet.
Yeah. This was followed by FTR defeating the Learning Trees, Brian Keith and Big Bill. The Outrunners came out to celebrate with FTR, and at this point I'm just thinking, okay, this is you're not really capitalizing on what happened at Wrestle Dream right now.
Yeah.
It's okay, that's just the match that happened against a pretty cold FTR that aren't really doing anything against the two members of the Learning Tree. So.
And not to be that guy, I know, but I hate people who do this, but I only do this because it's just genuinely true. If this sort of thing was like the Revival wrestled a match on Raw and then had a posing moment with Alpha Academy, people would be like, this sucks. And even though I like the Outrunners, this is silly. This is stupid. What is this?
Yeah, I say I'm totally fine with the Outrunners being featured. It's just it's just you ended Wrestle Dream in such a strong note with such intrigue and speculation about what was going to happen, and then you're just watching a nothing match in the grand scheme of things, and then the Outrunners coming out and just doing a pose down. It's this doesn't really fit the tone of what you set out at Wrestle Dream. So yeah. That was the biggest issue I had with it.
I agree.
The Claim Club were having an interview backstage, and then they were interrupted by MVP and Shelton Benjamin. MVP gave them their card. Bowens refused, but Max Caster slide the card into his pocket, so sowing the seeds for their eventual breakup, which has been long overdue.
I would prefer this to be the other way around.
I think Bowens needs to be the babyface.
But my fear is that putting it on Caster makes it seem like they're going to put more stock in Caster.
Yeah, but for me, it just doesn't work the other way around, because people won't get behind Caster as a babyface. Bowens is the clear babyface out of the two of them. He's the likable guy out of the two of them. Max has to be the shithead, and Max will just be, they'll be part of this Hurt Business reunion. The Hurt Syndicate reunion, and he'll just be the guy that eats the pinfalls probably.
Yeah, I guess you're not wrong.
Then you have and he'll cut out the rapping and he'll just be a serious guy, but he'll just be a serious guy that loses more often. But TBS Championship, Mercedes Moné versus Queen Oanata. This was definitely one of Mercedes' better matches since she's joined AEW. I'm a big fan of Queen Oanata. I think she's got a lot of potential, and Mercedes retains, as you expect. Nothing really built off the back of this. We don't know who her next opponent will be, but occasionally just have a title match and have a good match and have the champion retain.
2025, I really want to see a significant focus on Mercedes and Okada doing more. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see them in storylines that play out on pay-per-view, because it really feels like we just haven't seen much of that.
There was an interview between Private Party, who asked the Young Bucks to have a rematch. Bucks say no, and Soapy Hathaway comes in and says that, basically alludes to the fact that Isaiah Cassidy is the single star out of the two of them, and says that the next time they lose a tag match, they should be disbanded. So we'll see what direction that ends up taking. Then there was another segment where the Elite said they were going to send Kenny Omega a birthday cake. They put the cake out there, but then covered it in full of intestines and other offal and guts and stuff like that. And Jack Perry basically said that
I'd be okay if you died.
yeah, essentially just like, hey, if you died, I would be pretty cool with that. So yeah, they're obviously sowing the seed still between Jack Perry going after Kenny Omega at some point, but obviously we know that there's the Daniel Garcia aspect as well. So I don't know when Kenny's going back. I don't think anyone really knows outside of people in AEW. So
I'm now guessing if it's not Wrestle Dream, it's
not. It's definitely not Wrestle Dream. Yeah.
Not World. If it's not World's End, it's Wrestle Dynasty. And I think, or at least I did before this promo, that it was going to be Golden Lovers take the belts off of the Young Bucks. But Jack Perry randomly going that hard on Kenny makes me feel like, okay, are we just going to have Kenny beat Jack? Which I'd be okay with.
Well, I've got a different scenario for Perry a little bit later on, but we'll talk about that when we get to this segment, which is the segment where AEW Dynamite kind of came alive in the second hour, which was the conglomeration versus the Elite in a match that ended in no contest after all of the Blackpool Combat Club group came out to attack the babyfaces. You had loads of other people come out to try and make the save. You had Top Flight and the Dark Order come out to try and help out. The Dark Order tried to convince the Bucks and Okada to get involved, but they refused to. You had Perry come out to lead them backstage. And then eventually you had Private Party and Daniel Garcia come out to help them, chase them away, and they backed off. But yeah, they just delivered an almighty beat into the other members of the conglomeration and the other people there. The only thing that I feel one thing that I feel like is pretty bad about the whole episode of Dynamite in general, I don't want to be super negative because overall I like this show, but the fact that Darby Allin was on this show live in any capacity I thought was weird.
Oh, but he did let you know that, hey, you can buy an autographed picture of Tony Hawk.
It's
very weird.
That's good. Oh yeah, that's good. It's good to know. I was like, I don't mind them doing, those sort of charitable initiatives, but it's kind of like, it's he's meant to be the focal point of this AEW versus Blackpool Combat Club thing, and the fact that he's not there on the first show back was a bit weird. I think that this is setting up for Cassidy to be one of the first challengers for Moxley, because he was the one that was kind of the focal point of their assault. I think there were some good things to come out of this. I thought that as we'll see later on the show, there was a part where the Blackpool Combat Club was still fighting people backstage and getting into their truck and driving away with John Silver running off them, which it's one of those things that I understand because it was funny and it's a nice meme thing, but it's kind of this is supposed to be super serious right now. To see it's a small guy running after the truck doesn't feel that it kind of keeping in the tone again.
It's super annoying because AEW gets knocked too much this, and I don't want to add to that, but it's also fuck, man, get everybody, if everybody in that roster just took everything seriously for 2 weeks, imagine what the show would look like. Because yeah, it is a nice meme, and I saw plenty of people adding the Hanna-Barbera cartoon sound effects towards it and all that. But like, God, can you imagine if they just took it seriously?
Mm. Yeah, that's probably the biggest was the biggest local. But then after that, you had Evil Uno cut a great promo about like what AEW means to them, and then Top Flight followed that up as well with the best promo that they've ever cut in this in the company. So again, this whole story is about elevating the younger mid card guys and pushing them to the next level. So that I thought was really really good. But yeah, we'll need to see how this progresses moving forward. But the thing I saw that caught my interest in this whole segment was the way that Jack Perry behaved in it, and it always like leads me back to a couple of a month or two ago where when Moxley first returned back and he had that segment where Jack Perry says like, I don't care what anyone says, I think you're a sweet kid.
Yeah.
So I think that the long term for this is that Perry leaves the Elite to join this Blackpool Combat Club group because he believes that they're more aligned to his desire to cleanse AEW and to lead it into a bright new future than what the Bucks and Okada and the Elite are about.
And I do think that this is eventually leading towards another Elite BCC faction war and all that. But I agree with you, because I'm not going to say that it felt like Perry was calling the shots, but they were all frozen until he showed up, and then they were like, yeah, I guess we'll go. So I can see Kenny and maybe even Coda, depending on what his health and schedule is, joining that group. I'd honestly, I'd like for it to not even have Okada, it'd just be, the elite, where it's Hangman. But I can see that being a thing. I liked it. It's just, again, I don't know what the big picture is, and if the big picture is just we eventually get around to it's just Darby and then it's just Christian, I think we could have saved the Moxley step for something more long-term significance.
I get it, but I feel like the Perry stuff will fit pretty well, and I think eventually you probably do have to have the Elite on the side of AEW and be on the babyface run. So I think there'll be stuff in between that, but this could very well, like, one of the matches that is like the end of this entire thing could be like Omega versus Moxley. Not for the title necessarily, but like maybe by that point Moxley already lost. Because I still think Darby Allin is going to be the guy that beats Moxley for the title. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. As I say, there's plenty of time in between all that stuff happening. We have no idea when Kenny Omega's coming back at any point soon. So yeah, and then Shelton Benjamin defeated Lio Rush, best match of the night. Like, Shelton is still crazy athletic for a guy at 49 years old.
Yeah, Benjamin getting his flowers was very nice for me.
Rush was fantastic in this match. Like, he sold amazingly for everything that Benjamin did.
I again got caught looking for Lashley, especially because it was Lio Rush. I was really like, okay, like, he has history with all of them. Is this the week? Because he's coming.
Everyone knows he's coming, but I imagine that the date might have been set because we found out backstage that Swerve Strickland's going to be facing Shelton Benjamin on October 30th, the Friday Night Dynamite. Amazing! They've announced the match 2 weeks in advance.
That is funny.
Yeah, so that's a big match in terms of what direction this could end up going. Swerve, who's one of the biggest stars of the company, against Benjamin, who just had that dominant victory. And that could very much be the date that people are going to pencil was like, okay, that's when Lashley's coming in. Because that gives them time to build the match for Full Gear. So we'll see how that goes. Don Callis had a press conference. He announced that Brian Cage is now part of the Don Callis family. Lance Archer's now in the Don Callis family. So they're apparently the tag team that's going to be...
Yeah, I don't... So, first of all, get the Ring of Honor television title off the guy if you're already going, he's going to be a full-time AEW guy again. You know, that's frustrating.
I think Cage is one of those guys that will still appear on Ring of Honor fairly regularly, because I think he just likes to work and likes to do stuff. So I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. I mean, it's similar to, like, Fletcher when he was holding the TV title. He was still doing stuff on Ring of Honor every now and again.
I wonder if this tag team is going to have any great success.
I'd imagine not. I don't think they're ever going to win the tag titles. Put it that way.
Yeah, given the teams that could, I can't see them.
Ring of Honor tag titles, maybe.
Yeah, that I'll give you that.
Then Takeshi comes out. He cuts a promo primarily in Japanese, but then cuts in English at the end as well, and that was great. And Cole Fletcher refuses to explain why he turned on Will Ospreay, because that's the oldest trick in the heel book. Basically say, you want to know why I turned on this person? Well, too bad, because you guys suck and you stink. It's like,
yeah,
that's basic shit. I don't exactly align too much with that, but I mean, the eventual match you have between Fletcher and Ospreay will be great, so we'll wait until that happens. Mariah May's looking for a challenge backstage, saying that there's not enough people to face her. There's no competition backstage. She still hasn't had a celebration, and Mina's not around, and Toni Storm's not there. Anna Jay gets in her face. She slaps Christopher Daniels accidentally when she tries to slap Mariah May, and it's been announced that they're going to have a match for the title at Battle of the Belts, which has already been recorded and has happened. I don't think it's really spoiling anything to say that, I think Mariah May's going to win the title, retain the title.
Yeah, I mean, you don't say. It's
but yeah, there is still no clear direction about where Mariah is going
really
or where the title's going. So
really frustrating, because again, you could have. I think at this point, given the nature of the two reigns, it would have meant more to have the title on Mercedes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think you could have just flopped what Willow and Julia were doing and all that with just putting the TBS title on Toni Storm. I don't think it changes anything. I think she can still do the obnoxious character, the Ben Mankiewicz stuff. I think all that stuff still goes, and Mercedes at least feels like more of a high-profile champion.
Yeah, I say I think the titles are the wrong way around right now, but that's we'll see. Toni Storm will eventually be coming back soon because she's still just touring Mexico at the moment. Did you see some of the interviews she's been giving?
Yeah, she's a character, and I'm so glad that she's getting the chance to do this, but it's also just man, AEW needs that top star right now, and they need someone to really come in and elevate the belt in the same way that Britt and Thunder Rosa did for a while, which unfortunately feels like the division has passed both of them by. But I don't know, that's one area where I feel bad having as many issues with it as I do, but it's just not looking good.
Then we had the main event, Christian Cage defeated Jay White after
objectively one of the funniest timing mishaps I've ever seen in a wrestling match.
What was the moment specifically you have in mind?
Specifically, it's the Christian Cage goes for a spear, which is the finishing spot, but he goes to the move so early that Kip Sabian runs to the apron. You can see Christian say, "No, not yet. Get down." He's filmed leaving, going back into the crowd. Hangman comes out way too early. Is also filmed just laying on the ground. And then they have another 4 minutes in the ring, including superplex spot and all that. And then they go for the spear. Okay, Kip Sabian distracts the ref. Hangman hits the buckshot on Jay White. Christian gets the pin, and Hangman has now returned the favor, whether he wanted to or not, for Christian from when Jay White fought Hangman in the Owen. Funniest thing I've ever seen. I felt bad, but it was just so comical.
Yeah, the match itself was it was totally fine. It was a good match, but it's it kind of fell below what my expectations for these two guys fighting each other would would imagine to be. But Hangman Page hit the buckshot lariat on Jay White when the referee was distracted. Cage got the victory. They did the whole mirror spot of Cage doing that to help Hangman beat Jay White in the Owen earlier, and he just laid at ringside, and Hangman just did the exact same thing. So that was a funny little mirroring spot. But they're going to do presumably White versus Page in some sort of
Texas Death Match. I think it's
Texas Death Match probably makes sense. That's Hangman's match. So that'd be a cool match to have. Especially if they're match best friends,
Christian's going to cash in.
No, because I think the Moxley thing has changed everything. Because reports, at least with Wrestling Observer newsletter, reported that the original plan for Bryan Danielson's title reign was that Darby Allin would beat him for the title at Wrestle Dream, but now the Mox story has kicked off. So I imagine the story was going to be that Darby would beat Bryan Danielson and then Christian would beat Darby for the title.
I still think that that's the move. I just don't think that they have any idea what they want to do beyond. And Christian cashes in on Darby, and we get to say Christian was a high-profile world champion, and Darby will eventually beat him. But I think everything in between, they have no idea. So Christian's just sitting around with a contract, and it's kind of funny.
I think you can't end this Moxley run too quickly. I think Moxley needs to hold this title for a while in order to build up this aura that he's established as the main antagonist in AEW. You can't end this story or end his title reign in 2 or 3 months. It has to be 6 months to a year long reign, you'd imagine, to help really establish him as who is finally going to beat him and who's finally going to get that lift from defeating the big bad of AEW, and when Darby does that. So, and also, I don't think you really want to undercut that moment by having Darby win and then just have Christian Cage immediately come out and win the title off of him.
I would agree, but you never know. They might just want to. Darby might be one of those weird guys.
Or maybe Christian catches in and Darby just beats him as well. Who knows?
So I'll be honest. I know that it was probably during the hurricane, but did you touch upon the Todd Grisham thing?
Oh, with him talking about what he was told from Vince.
Yeah, him claiming that he was told, yeah, don't make a big deal out of Christian. Given that, Tony Khan was that's ridiculous and Christian's awesome, I think that gives more incentive to just be even if it's just for a month, Christian has to be AEW World Champion. To be yeah, I appreciate the great talents like Christian, like Danielson, like Sting. You know?
I think that's a possibility. I also think there's a possibility in my mind that they decide to pivot things a little bit later down the road where it's Copeland's back. So maybe can we transition Christian's thing to say it's not necessarily has to be for a world title shot, but it could be for the world tag titles?
Well, I've been a big proponent, and I've been an even bigger proponent these days, given the rapid nature of injuries, of just do the thing. And I would be okay with that because Edge and Christian haven't officially teamed for a run in over 20 years. So just do the thing.
But that's Dynamite then, and so that brings us to the end of this week's Hot Tags. Again, I don't see anything else super exciting to talk about. Apparently on tonight's SmackDown, Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa are going to go face to face. So excited for that.
Are you excited for the debut of Motor City Machine Guns?
Oh yeah, that is happening tonight, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you feel like WWE will do them justice?
I don't think they'll do a bad job with them. I'll say that much. I don't know whether, because at the moment, because the tag titles are tied up in the Bloodline, I don't know whether they'll be the ones to end up beating.
Yeah, that's the thing. If they were just on Raw, this would be completely different.
Yeah, and they could be part of the tournament to win, and then eventually
just win, and then just beat Judgment Day, and then okay, cool. The Motor City Machine Guns are WWE Tag Team Champions.
But I mean, we'll see. As I say, I don't think they're going to be immediately downplayed, or they won't have I say it could go one or two ways because you never know with WWE, but it could be a case of 6 months times they could be tag champions, or 6 months times they could be, just having random matches with Angel Garza and Humberto.
Well, that's how I think they're coming in. I think they're gonna fight them in like a one-off tag. I just don't want to see them get lost in the shuffle. But I do want to commend WWE for like taking a look at their, because I know they wanted the Lucha Bros too. I do want to commend them for taking a look at their main roster tag teams and going, yeah, we need some established teams here because this is very bare bones.
Oh yeah, this is better for them than to just go through NXT. So, which they totally don't need to do. So
right, it might not be better for the fan base because again they are joining the Bloodline show, but I think it's better for them to just say, hey, we did it. After like 20 years, we made it to the WWE main roster.
And the fact they've given them vignettes means that they're at least like initially they have some stock that they want to put into them, and they're going to try and treat them well to get going. So
that's just overall a thing that I think Triple H enjoys. I think he likes the vignette packaging instead of just being like, and somebody's here. I think that's just going to be a thing we see more of moving forward, which I'm fine with. Because those are what help people have iconic runs.
So we'll be sure to check back once the Motor Machine Guns have made that debut, and if there is anything else from SmackDown that we know to talk about on next week's Hot Tags, we will. But for now, that draws a close. I believe by the time you hear us next week, Tony will have returned triumphantly to take back the reins of the show, which I've had a loose grip on for the last couple of weeks, but I think that draws everything to an end. So as I said before, or said earlier on in the show, if you want to leave a like or you have any thoughts on any of the things that we discussed, any topics, or your thoughts on any of the shows we reviewed and all of that stuff, just leave it down in the comments. Helps build up the algorithm, helps us get featured a lot more on the pages, especially if you like or subscribe as well. Check out the Patreon or through the YouTube membership if you want to have any spare change available and you want to help support us, help keep the lights on around here. It's all greatly appreciated. $10 tier gives you access to the Darkcast, which is the additional videos and podcasts we put together. And then if you really want to go up all the way to the $50 tier, which is pick your poison, you get to choose what topics that we discuss, obviously within reason, of course. But yeah, you can check out all that stuff there as well. Redbubble and TeePublic, you get to pick up some merchandise there. Check out Smark website for all the articles that are going on there. Head to the Discord, join the Facebook group. Head on over to Fanboys Anonymous for the geek culture stuff and all the other stuff on the sister site. You can find me at Weekmeister14 on Twitter. You can check out the Power Rankings, which is my weekly contribution to the Smark website every single Saturday. You can also find the Fantasy League there, www.fantasyleague.com as well. We can see how our teams are doing, who's picking up points as we head towards the next rest stop at Crown Jewel, where our teams will switch it up a little bit. And also be checking out everything that Rob's got going on.
That's right. And real quick on the Fantasy League side of things, I'm sure I need to start rapidly picking up some points after losing quite a few of the pay-per-view things. I did put the Motor City Machine Guns on my team. You can go check all that stuff out at www.fantasyleague.com.
You're doing better than me. I've not won a single predictions contest this entire year.
Oh, man. I guess it's harder when you're not watching the shows, but you do come close. So
yeah, I pretty much come second every single time, I think. Like, Tony's won pretty much every single prediction contest, so.
Yeah. And speaking of, you can check him out under amangotree.com, and you know how to find all of Tony Mango's links. And as for me, you can find me everywhere at Dude Felice. Check out my work writing over on Fightful.com. And thank you for all the support. And we will see you on Tuesday with the NXT Halloween Havoc preview show.
Okay, that wraps up everything here. Thank you very much for listening and supporting in any way that you do. And we'll see you again next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.